very familiar with those genres. And in the end, Deathblade here with another Chinese fantasy novel FAQ, and in this case it is not a frequently asked question, it is a frequently answered question. What does that mean? Well, you will find out in a moment. First, I would like to say that this video is sponsored by my book, The Heretic Peacekeeper, which you can get right now. You can get it in paperback and hardback on Amazon. Now these, if you look closely, I'll put it up there, you can see, I think you can see, is actually a proof version. So the real version does not have this giant ugly gray bar on it, but I have it paperback. This is the hardback version as well, and this one is also proof, and the front cover is kind of messed up, but it will be fixed in time for the launch. By the time this video comes out, it will be live, so you can get it on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and in ebook format, or on a lot of other places online, such as Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Amazon, I already said on Apple, Google Play, just a lot of different places. Check the links in the description below for that. It's the best way to support the channel. The book is a cyberpunk cultivation novel. That is how I'm billing it. It's a cultivation novel. The series is a cultivation series, but the initial setting is a cyberpunk dystopian future, reminiscent of Blade Runner, if you have seen that movie, and many other types of movies. So anyway, that's a great way to support the channel. Please check it out. Now, as I said, I am doing a frequently answered question. What does that mean? Well, it means that I actually don't hear people asking this question very often. Does Xianxia take place in ancient China? But I see people answering it a lot. In other words, explaining or educating other people about what Xianxia is like. Now, to get some background, I see this question popping up on Twitter a lot. I am most active on social media on Twitter, and that's where I see this. I would say almost every day, probably not every day. Back when I originally started checking Twitter for Xianxia and wuxia stuff, it was probably around 2015 when I was translating I Shall Seal the Heavens, and nobody was talking about Xianxia. Things have changed since then. Obviously, the web novel scene exploded, and a lot of people are interested in those kind of genres. Also, there was a translation, Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, that was turned into an animated version that was turned also into a live-action TV drama that was really, really popular. It is really, really popular. The fandom for that exploded, and a lot of people are talking about that series on Twitter. I do go to Twitter pretty regularly and search for things like wuxia and Xianxia just to kind of see what people are talking about, see what people are watching and reading, so that I kind of keep up to date on what's going on in the industry. And so yes, I see a lot of people who claim to know so much about Xianxia, or who claim to be enlightened and obviously know more than other people, just really disdainfully pointing out, well, these people are so stupid, how do they not know that Xianxia takes place in ancient China? Well, if I was going to ask the question, does Xianxia take place in ancient China? The simple answer is no, it does not. Now, let me qualify that. Are there some Xianxia novels that take place in ancient China? I would imagine that there are. I have not read every single Xianxia novel. In fact, there are a lot of people who are much more well-read than me. I've mentioned this on the channel before. Now, I've done a lot of research into the stuff that I translate to make sure I'm translating certain words or phrases or concepts accurately, and I obviously do read other translators' work, just not necessarily from cover to cover, so to speak. And what I can say is that definitively it is wrong to say that Xianxia takes place in ancient China. Of the three major series that I have translated, two of them by one author, another by a different author, one of them being I Shall Seal the Heavens, which is really, really popular. You can get that on Amazon right now, by the way. Of those three series, none of them take place in ancient China. None of them, okay? And of the big series that I know about that are really popular, I'm fairly certain that virtually none of them actually take place in ancient China. Now, what does happen with these series a lot? Many times, the initial setting of the book will seem like ancient China. A lot of times they even use the names of ancient dynasties or ancient locations within China. And so sometimes it can be kind of confusing when you're reading, for example, in I Shall Seal the Heavens, it starts out in the state of Zhao, there was really a state of Zhao in ancient China. And in I Shall Seal the Heavens, it even mentions certain historical figures that are actually from China. But when you end up reading the novel deeper in, you realize it is not actually ancient China. Is it reminiscent of ancient China? Yes. Do the people act like ancient Chinese people? Yes. Do they presumably speak Chinese? Yes, although to be fair, modern Mandarin is nothing like the kind of language that they would have spoken many years ago. That's a different issue. The point is just that the novels definitely are analogous to ancient China in terms of the setting. The clothes they wear, the customs they adhere to, all of those different things are absolutely like ancient China. Now let's talk about the Untamed Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation for a minute. I have watched a little bit of the show. I've not read the novel. I've not watched the animation. I generally know the gist of it. I am not enough of a fan to know if it actually takes place in ancient China. Maybe it does. My initial impression was that it didn't, because the place names and the names of the supposedly super powerful or important clans I don't think are real. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong on the Untamed. It does take place in actual ancient China. I know there are people on my channel who are fans of the Untamed Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, so please feel free to weigh in the comments below and let me know specifically for that novel. If people are saying, does the Untamed take place in ancient China, and it does, then obviously the correct answer to that question is yes, the Untamed does take place in ancient China, if it does. But it is absolutely 100% wrong to claim that Xianxia in general is supposed to take place in ancient China. It would be as stupid as making a statement such as, Western epic fantasies take place in medieval Europe. I mean, that's just absurdly, obviously not correct. There are maybe some historical fantasies that do take place in medieval Europe. Plenty of fantasy novels have settings that are reminiscent of Europe. For instance, I've been reading The Witcher, and I know that there's a lot of historical analogs, but the setting of The Witcher is not actually ancient Europe, obviously. And again, it's the same with Xianxia. So I never really engage with people on Twitter because there are a lot of toxic people who are just so angry and condescending and think they know so much. I don't really want to interact with those people. But if you hear people saying this, I'm not suggesting that you need to interact with those people or engage with them. I am all for being, hands off and not getting involved in online debates and arguments because it's kind of stupid. But you can just know, for your own knowledge, that no, Xianxia, as a rule, does not have to take place in ancient China. The setting, language, the culture, all those different things are definitely supposed to be like ancient China, similar to how a Westerner writing a epic fantasy in a setting that's similar to ancient or to medieval Europe would most likely be attempting to have the people act in a way that would make sense for that setting, historically speaking, even though it's not a historical novel. I honestly don't really know how exactly this got started. Again, I'm looking forward to the comments from the Untamed and Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation fans letting me know if the setting is actually ancient China or not. And if it is not, in fact, ancient China, then I don't know how people started thinking that it was. But it's definitely, even if it is, it's stupid to say that just because the Untamed is a Xianxia story, that obviously then all Xianxia takes place in one specific kind of setting. So that's all I have for this video. I think this is kind of a short one, but it's a really simple answer. However, it goes to illustrate a point that there is a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. There are a lot of people who think they're experts in a subject that are not. And just because you have some knowledge of one specific show or property, or even a couple different ones, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know it all. I know that applies to me as well. That said, I do try to make sure that I am making informed statements based on my experience translating so much work and all of the research that I've done into that. Some of the videos that I do, such as this one, are just me kind of talking based on what I know already. Some of them I do extra research into, and of course the novels that I have translated have involved massive amounts of research. For those of you who follow me, I put footnotes into a lot of my translations explaining things like cultural norms or religious things, because a lot of stuff in Xianxia comes from religions like Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and whatnot. So just be careful about what you believe when people are talking online. So again, this video is sponsored by my novel, The Heretic Peacekeeper. Please check it out in the pinned comment or the description below, and I will see you next time. Godspeed.